Welcome to CMO Confidential, the podcast that takes you inside the drama, decisions, and choices that go with being the head of marketing. Hosted by five-time CMO Mike Linton.
Welcome, marketers, advertisers, and those who love them, the Chief Marketing Officer Confidential. CMO Confidential is a program that takes you inside the drama, the decisions, and the politics that go with being the head of marketing at any company in what is one of the most scrutinized jobs in the executive suite. I'm Mike Linton, the former Chief Marketing Officer of Best Buy, eBay, Farmers Insurance, and Ancestry.com, here today with my guest, Karna Crawford. Today's topic, the customer loyalty crisis and what to do about it. Now, Karna is the CMO at Marqeta, a position she took after holding a number of positions in B2C marketing, including SVP of Marketing Strategy at JPMorgan, SVP at Moxie, and head of U.S. marketing at Ford. Marqeta specializes in embedding issuing and processing capabilities for brands, all designed to build customer loyalty. Karna has a great deal of experience in tracking and managing customer loyalty, and she's here today to give us some insights into a topic business knows is important, but seems to be declining if you ask a lot of actual customers, including me. Welcome, Karna.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it.
All right. Let's jump right into the headline topic, which we know is one of your passions, customer loyalty. How do you define loyalty, and what's really going on in the overall marketplace when we look at loyalty and how it's doing?
Absolutely. So for me, when I think about how I define loyalty, it's really about how when a customer not only chooses to transact with a brand the most, but importantly, is willing to transact with that brand even when the price may be higher or when there are lots of other options to choose from. That's the simplified articulation that I like to give of loyalty, where my brand love may in fact supersede transaction.
Yeah, the value is so great that price and other things are secondary.
Absolutely. And, you could go back to our classic marketing college undergrad classes, and it's about that price value equation and making sure that value exceeds. What's going on, I think we all know it, every marketer is facing it, or most every marketer is facing it, no matter what industry we're in, which is the fact that brand promiscuity is on the rise. Customers are specifically, whether it's B2B or B2C, are now being much more promiscuous with their brands. The key is what's going on that's driving at that. And I think there are a couple of different things going on.
Now, why all this promiscuity?
Yes, I think there are a couple things. One, we have a proliferation of choice. If you look at times past, we had fewer options for most things, maybe not in the CPG world, but for most other things, we had fewer options to choose from. And brands did a great job of locking you into those options. And so you were much more loyal. Now, you look at things like the wireless industry, and they've taken away those things that locked you in. They eliminated those barriers. But importantly, social and e-commerce have changed the game in accessibility and availability, which has now expanded your choices and your awareness of choices, which then puts a lot more pressure on the product being differentiated and higher value. And so in a world where you've got a lot of products that are sameness for each other, I now no longer need or want to be loyal to you. I'm going to be promiscuous and go based on who's giving me the best deal or the best situation in that moment. And it's causing a crisis.
So is this a marketplace problem? A customer just now, the barriers to loyalty have been dropped, or the barriers that kept loyalty in have been dropped, and the customers are just responding to the marketplace, or the companies have some skin in this game as well?
I think what's happening is the companies have not always had enough skin in the game. The reality is they've been able historically to create barriers that kind of held you in, and they didn't have to work as hard to drive the increased value and brand love that would hold you in. Now, those other things that held me in are gone. The importance of creating that value exchange, the importance of generating brand love and giving me a reason beyond the transaction to choose you is very different than it ever was in the past. And now companies have to work harder and invest more in it. And not every company has built that muscle. I will also say we had the power of really strong loyalty programs in the past and loyalty cards in the past that would help hold people in. And now you have a proliferation of cards. Many loyalty programs are diluting their value. And so even that mechanism that used to hold me in a lot of ways, is now losing its power. And meaning the consumer or the customer, is being promiscuous.
If I summarize what you just said, see if I get this right, because what I hear you saying is the marketplace changed dramatically. A lot is driven by the web and choice and social, and suddenly all the barriers that used to keep you loyal got dropped. And consumers moved with the marketplace and companies didn't keep up.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk about this, because one of the things, and you called this, I think, when we were talking earlier, a little bit of a loyalty crisis, which is really bad for businesses that have spent a lot of money building brands and positions. But everyone knows one of the easiest ways to drive the bottom line is improve retention, and that is loyalty. And there's books on this and topics and everywhere else. How is this happening that companies aren't keeping up with this? And then we'll talk about what they can do about it next.
Well, the first thing I will say is, does everybody know? Does everybody appreciate that retention can supersede, from a value perspective,
That's a good point, because I think an awful lot of people get overhyped on acquisition and forget retention as the best way to make money.
How many businesses have I been in where I have had to sell the business on shifting investment and priority to focus on their existing customers at more or equal to focusing on getting net new customers? Now, every business has a leaky bucket, so you absolutely have to be driving in new acquisition into your business in a very ongoing way. But if you look at the wireless industry, if you look at the auto industry, you keep going down these businesses, how much of their investment is going, or what proportion of their investment is going against net new acquisition versus going against building brand love with the customers that they have in order to lower the churn, maintain ongoing relationships, build the belief system for the next transaction to follow. It seems true because we learned it in school, but it doesn't actually always play out.
You're right. I think this comes to the math that everyone pays attention to, is people are way more focused on CAC than they are on churn. But
exactly.
Reducing, look, and I put NPS in a couple of companies and started 2 loyalty programs, but the amount of focus on CAC is disproportionately crazy when you look at it versus the focus on churn, which is you're just throwing away years and years of money in the churn.
100%.
It drives me nuts.
100%.
So let's flip this over. And so why are companies not getting this? And then we'll talk about how marketers can get them to get us. Because the math, once you look at the math, it's overwhelming. The churn math is almost always overwhelming. Why don't they get it?
I think the first part of it is looking at the right math, right? So every company is doing some semblance of a great job of assessing their business, and they find that thing that either is driving the value or declining the value or eroding the value, and that's what they go and laser on. And that may mean that other things are not getting the focus that they should. So I think one of the issues is making sure that as a CMO, we are constantly driving the company to focus on the value with existing customers as much as they focus on the value of driving in new customers. That KPI set and driving that KPI set is critical. I think the second thing is we often at times will get too focused on kind of the inside out. Most of our organizations are built with, you build the product, you sell the product. Not every organization has you build love and you maintain love. And so therefore the activity that is being managed and the investment being managed is going against the sale, not necessarily against the retain. And so that's a shift. And then we also, from that inside out view, tend to focus on how do we decrease cost. The reality is, in the immediate term, so often retaining a customer drives cost.
Oh, the math is, yeah.
It's easy to lose sight of, I am driving a cost right now in order to drive more lifetime value in the future, or decrease or offset another cost in the future. And that marriage of now and future is not always how a business is managed.
And let me paraphrase what you said and see if I'm going to add something to this, which is my other thing that I've seen is, tell me if you think this is right, is a bunch of people inside the company expect the churn. They accept the churn as part of the general business versus a problem that can be fixed, especially when it costs money. So they'll say, yeah, we always lose 20% of the people, and that just happens. That's part of the model.
100%. Unless you're a business who actually has a churn problem, meaning you're losing one in every two people that you bring in. And those are the businesses that oftentimes are the ones more proactively looking at it. And I'm not saying no businesses look at their churn or managing retention, et cetera, because absolutely many do, but there are many that disproportionately do and are missing out on some opportunities there.
And don't allocate capital to solve churn like they allocate capital to acquire.
Especially if they're not thinking about things from a total lifetime value perspective versus an individual transaction perspective.
Great comment. We've done a couple shows on lifetime value, which are companion shows already to this. So let's write the marketer into the story. How should the marketer bring this topic up in the C-suite to make sure they get heard, especially if it's not in their zone? Like, say it's the product, or it's the service, or it's this, other issues. What do you recommend people do?
So have you ever, are you familiar with the book, Mike, The 5 Love Languages?
Yes, I sadly am familiar with that book.
All right. So what I would say,
I think I was the first person to score low on all 5, but okay, go ahead.
I won't even get into the fact that I wish that I had known about that book before I got divorced. I probably could have fixed a lot of things. But anyway, I like to say that the love language of the C-suite is profitable growth. At the end of the day, when you get down to it, especially when you're in public companies, the love language is profitable growth.
I agree with that.
So I think what's really important for us as CMOs is to be able to tell our story through the lens of monetary value, show the math, show and demonstrate how decreasing churn, increasing transaction value of existing customers, increasing lifetime value can actually accelerate profitable growth versus investing some of those dollars in net new acquisitions with high acquisition costs, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Being able to understand how you can drive value, not just drive cost through that loyalty behavior, can be really, really valuable in telling that love language story. And then also being able to bring in what happens if you don't. So being able to demonstrate share value declines that will happen over time if you keep losing more than you're gaining, and so on.
A lot of times, having lived in this space, I agree completely with what you just said about the love language. It's profitable growth. The argument has always been, you're just making up how bad it's going to be to get your money and to get your way, especially if you're asking other people to do something different in the company. Give us tips for how you make that sale, even if you have the math, just conceptually when you're having the discussion.
That is a great question, because to be honest, I can think of a time where I was trying to talk to someone about the importance of driving. This wasn't specifically about loyalty, but it was the type of dissonance that you're describing. I was talking to someone about the importance of investing into driving growth among a particular multicultural audience group and women, where I was able to show, I would use 2 hands to show you, but I only have one right now. I was able to show the complete crisscross. The growth happening in our category at the time was double-digit growth, all driven by women, Hispanic, African American, and Asian, depending on which way you cut it.
Yeah.
The decline that we saw in our business was all being driven by those exact same groups. And so the conversation that someone said was, that's okay. We've got these other groups and they're still buying. And I said, but now look at the data that shows how the dynamics or the makeup of the US population are changing. Help me understand if, X number of more buyers coming into the market are going to be
the fastest growing demographics in the country.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And so the starting point was, I've got this covered, and I had to help people understand, actually walk them step by step through playing out that future lens in order for them to buy into the data. And then it was a no-brainer. And so even though my example wasn't specifically about kind of this loyalty discussion, it's really an example about strategic influence, how you help layer strategic influence on top of the data to break it down into things that people care about. And in this instance, they cared about not being the leader in the category that we were in at the time.
That's a great example. Yeah, what I used to use is what you have to believe if you think this is going to work, and what you have to believe if we don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That created usually a pretty good argument. Can we flip over to AI now? And one of the things about AI is I can look at this two ways and say, one way, this allows me to way more personalize my approach to you as a brand and give you that personalization that makes you more loyal. The other way I could say is AI gives me a path into you as a competitive brand where I can poke at anybody's other weakness. Mm-hmm. Tell me how this should be used or thought about by people on both sides of this, trying to take share or protect share.
A couple things that I would say about it. I am very bullish on AI. I know that there are a lot of downsides, a lot of risk factors that get talked about a lot in the press, and I don't want to dismiss those, particularly for some of the areas that I'm going to talk about, but I'm very bullish on AI as kind of a part of the next revolution of us as business people, not just as marketers. I do believe that it's going to do everything that you just said in terms of powering more personalization. What I also, though, think is that, like for in my business, for instance, it is going to power more personalized transaction underwriting and more personalized risk management. So in a world right now where every decision...
Just so our listeners get that right, when you say personalized underwriting transaction, I can have a specific loan percentage for you or the insurance rate for you that's for you versus the group. Is that right?
Exactly. So let me just give you, and this won't happen immediately, but let me just play it out for you. Let's use the world of card transactions, so credit card transactions as an example. In today's world, there is big machines in back rooms at big company banks that have these models that ultimately decide who gets approved for credit or a loan or who doesn't, or whether or not a transaction will get approved or not, et cetera, et cetera. And it's done at a level that's aggregating monolithic, massive amounts of data and then making go, no-go decisions. It creates a level of stress and pressure on the average, American in general. Right. But what if an individual company who you are a loyal customer to and has first-party data with you that they can layer on top of those kind of big data sets to be able to make a decision about a transaction or an action based on how you engage with them directly, not just based on aggregates of monolithic data. And then all of a sudden, you can start making decisions as a business based on Mike Linton's behavior with me, coupled with all of the world's behavior instead of just the world's behavior. And at that point, that then allows you to have even more personalized credit and access to capital, more personalized experiences that are beyond just, did I welcome Mike Linton when he showed up at my store or what have you, but rather the experience you are having with me at the foundation of my business is now even personalized. AI will make that possible.
So inherent in that answer, other than I want to make fun of me as a target, I won't. But inherent in that answer is if brands are not doing this, they will get passed by the brands that do. Is that right?
Ooh, I'm going to build on that. I actually think of AI, not just in that underwriting point, but just across the board. Right now, I call it the great equalizer. It is the thing that now introduces the ability for the challenger brands, the smaller companies, the disruptors, to be able to actually operate and behave at the scale and with the speed and with the level of capability that some of their larger competitors have in the past, which now is equalizing the playing field. And at the same
maybe even easier because I don't have to deal with this mainframe and all this tied up code.
Exactly.
Get zillions of regulations that are written in COBOL, and I'm trying to bring them out. So I see you saying AI is a two-edged sword, but if you don't have that sword in your hand, you're going to lose.
100%. And right now, the companies that are embracing it first are the ones that also are not sitting on top of legacy risk-averse business processes that are making a very slow move into this space.
Interesting. I want to flip over to, you did your whole career in business to consumer, and then you went to B2B. Tell us what each group can learn from the other, and then let's talk about how loyalty looks for both groups, B2B and B2C.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really important is that the core tenets of loyalty are the same, whether it's B2B or B2C. And in particular, it is about that increased value exchange. You add more value to me than the cost, and therefore I will go above and beyond to purchase and stay with you versus the lower cost or the better incentive from someplace else. At its core, that holds true in both. You may find that it is more emotionally charged inside of that in B2C versus B2B being likely more practical and more rational. But at its core, that value exchange is the essential tenet. I think that the brands that are the winners in B2B for this, I really look to somebody like Salesforce. In Salesforce, where they have identified the way to add more value, you look at like their Trailblazer training program. You look at all of the thought leadership that they produce that is actually about helping the businesses that are utilizing their systems be able to achieve more. The value that their account teams bring into helping you solve business problems, not just use their systems better. That is a layer of added value that actually makes it worth the fact that I may be paying a higher price for you versus other technologies. Yes, they have a great technology, but there are different ways that I could solve a lot of the things. And they've really done a great job of that. I think if I were to look at a brand that I wish in the B2C space was doing more to drive a great loyalty experience for me, I would look at my friends over at Gap Inc. I am a die-hard loyalist of Athleta brand. Like half my closet since COVID is that brand. But they have an entire family of brands. And I think there is a tremendous opportunity on the table for them to be cross-selling more effectively to get me to use or try BR, Gap, Old Navy in a way that they aren't currently. Their loyalty programs are treated differently.
I agree. Look, I used to be a Gap buyer.
Through line.
Yeah. Same thing. I used to buy Gap. I used to buy a lot of Gap. And then I realized not for anything they did, but everyone else just took everything I bought from Gap away from them.
Exactly. And so I love the company. I love the people there. They're going through a turnaround. So I feel very optimistic about where they're heading. They've been going through
a turnaround for a long time.
Yeah. I feel confident in the new executive team there, but there's a lot of opportunity, and it's a perfect example of really understanding that loyalty is about that value exchange, and then utilizing that to maximize value exchange across your portfolio, not just one point in time.
So I would be completely negligent if I didn't ask for a horror story or a Hall of Shame loyalty example, given how much you've studied this. What is some horror story you can tell on the air if you so choose to do so?
Specifically to loyalty?
Sure. Somebody that completely blew up loyalty.
Gosh, I don't know that I'm going to give you a horror story per se. Here's what I will say. I lived in Newark. Well, I lived in West New York, New Jersey, which
Yeah.
is by Hoboken.
Yeah.
My closest airport is Newark Airport. Newark Airport is basically owned by United.
Yeah.
So United had an opportunity to take loyalty because every other brand flying out of that airport is it is harder to get to any place that I want to go. United had an opportunity to steal my Delta loyalty and make me become loyal. But instead, what I experienced with them was their customer service people were often unfriendly and rude. Their product offering, meaning the plane itself and the flying experience, was subpar versus anybody else. Running into problems with them was always harder. So the reality is it was a missed opportunity because they could have stolen me from Delta. I grew up in Atlanta. I moved to New Jersey. It was prime opportunity for them to steal me from Delta. And they fell down on the job because they did not capitalize on the loyalty opportunity that they had with me.
They're a great example of it in so many ways. But my one friend said their tagline is, "We love to fly and it shows." And his answer is, no, it really doesn't. It doesn't.
Look, I feel badly because I'm sure you have United listeners. So I know you guys are a great business.
They're getting better. They're getting better. Yeah,
absolutely. But you had an opportunity with me that you missed.
All right. Let's talk briefly about your move from B to C to B to B. How was it? And how would you advise anybody in B2B or B2C thinking about making the move?
I will tell you, it took some convincing. I've spent my entire career building and expanding brands directly with consumers. And when the leadership team at Marqeta asked me to come over, it took some time to even have the conversation. But what I will say is I am so amazingly glad that I did for a couple of reasons. One is there are very few businesses that are consumer businesses that often don't have a B2B component to it. So being able to kind of round out my toolbox of like marketing experience and knowledge has been really valuable. But the other thing is what I'm learning is the data-driven marketer that I've always been in my career absolutely applies in the B2B space even more so. Because for most of us in B2B, we have a very precise ideal customer profile that we are trying to target and a very precise set of businesses that can buy our services. So targeting is even more important. Personalization is even more important. Moving people, all the things I've learned over here, I am now delivering at like exponential level of depth here in my B2B world. And it has been such an amazing experience building that capability and practice inside of Marqeta.
Thank you. Just one little quick follow-on for that. If I'm thinking of making the move from B2C to B2B, what question or two should I ask to ensure that the company is ready for me?
I think the first step is understanding for you as a marketer, what do you value the most? What's most important to you in the way that you are leading a marketing organization? Is it important that they value brand as much as they value the performance marketing? Is it important for you that they are investing in marketing at a certain level, et cetera? That's a really important thing when you shift into the B2B world versus B2C, especially direct to consumer, because marketing is much more of a sales enablement tool in B2B for a lot of businesses. And so if you're a marketer who believes in the brand, believes in brand building, you want to ask questions to ensure that the leadership team is aligned with that value proposition and aligned with investing to support and enable that value proposition. Otherwise, you're going to be solely disappointed with small budgets and a drive that is only or heavily focused on sales enablement and not necessarily focused on that brand building that may be really important to you.
Thank you. We're at time and we have a traditional last question. So here it is. It's a two-parter. Funniest story or piece of practical advice we haven't discussed yet. You can take both parts of that question or either one, but you have to take at least one.
So I have a story that is funny now, but was not funny in the moment. I want you to imagine you're in your like late 20s, early 30s, and you get a call about a job, and you're going back and forth through an interview process about what is effectively your dream job. Well, I was in that process in early text world where there's no delete, there's no edit. And I'm exchanging with a girlfriend of mine about how excited I am about an interview that I have for my dream job, like the next day. In the process of this, I am also in the middle of a pitch, and I'm texting with my CEO of my existing company about this pitch. I accidentally text about my dream job interview to my current CEO. And she's like, I'm sorry, you're interviewing with who?
What did you do?
WTF. I mean, honestly, I will tell you, there was no getting out of it. I couldn't delete it. I couldn't pull it back. And the statement was so clear, there's no way around it. So I had to just tell her. So I picked up the phone and called her, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry you found out this way. It's not a real thing. I'm not looking, but I just need you to know that it's one of those that if they call, I have to have that conversation because it's such an amazing thing that I've always aspired to in my career. So I tried to help her connect it to her as my mentor coach, not just her as my CEO. But the reality is it was just awkward and uncomfortable for months after that.
Yes. Texting is dangerous, and also slacking can be very dangerous as well. So thank you, Karna. That's a great way to end the show. And thanks to everyone for listening to CMO Confidential. If you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Look for all of our shows on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and the I Hear Everything Network, which include Marketing, The Battle Between Believers and Non-Believers, Parts 1, 2, and 3. Is the CMO position the hardest job in business? Tales from the Marketing Crypt, and a marketer turned tech exec talks about big data, mainframes, and AI. Hey, all you marketers, stay safe out there. This is Mike Linton signing off for CMO Confidential.